So I wanted to introduce this particular aircraft, and I figured I should do a video because it's a relatively uncommon aircraft and it's new to me as well. But before we talk about or show a match with this aircraft, we have to look at the performance. And what you're looking at right now is under match conditions, a climb time to 7,000 meters. The P-38K doesn't just get there ahead of the P-38L and the BF-109 G6 included here as benchmarks. It gets there a lot faster. And this is acceleration from that climb speed of about 260 IAS kph to 400. And what you can see pretty clearly is not just the climb to 7,000 meters, but the acceleration once the P-38K gets there is pretty bonkers. While it's not a pure high altitude aircraft like some of the P-47 variants, in that lower band of high altitude, it is an absolute monster from the standpoint of both climb and energy production. What that means in practical terms is exactly what you see here. This is the first match I've ever played in the P-38K. I've climbed in from my air spawn, and this is, I think, up to a 5.7. You can spot a Yak 3 over there in the corner, and I'm not just above all of the German aircraft, all of the Russian aircraft in this lobby. I'm above them by a lot, by a huge margin, and I'm actually going to spend the next several minutes pushing them down to my teammates. This is definitely not glamorous work. And if I were more familiar with the P-38K or just the P-38 platform in general, I certainly could have been more aggressive here. But it does do a good job of creating opportunities for my team. And I guess while I'm at it, we're looking at this interlude, I can talk about one of the things that I've tested. That's the instructor limits for the P-38K as well as for the P-51 only cost you about 2 degrees per second in terms of turn rate at a variety of altitudes. So in that sense, the P-38 is actually one of the better aircraft choices that you can fly. Now, is it a little bit awkward to aim with the instructor? Does the nose bobble around? Yes. Arguably, maybe even a little bit worse than the Mustang in that standpoint. So there is a skill set you have to learn as far as being aiming ahead or pulling lead with the keyboard and then fine-tuning with the mouse. I'm working on it. I'm not there yet. I feel a little bad for this IL-10. I don't think he saw me coming in because I had a teammate around. And, you know, the P-38's armament is really solid. You can't fault the aircraft there. And I do love to find fault with the P-38, but you can't fault the guns. As we close this out, here are a couple of quick examples of what it looks like to use the keyboard to pull ahead of the mouse cursor. You do have to align the wings, but that's how you pull lead for shots in the Lightning. Okay, so from here we're just going to jump into some highlights and really a lot of lowlights. My first 7 matches in this were pretty challenging, and some of them were winnable, but I didn't win them. This is one of those matches, and the only reason you're seeing me take off from the runway mid-match here is I'm showcasing the P-38K's energy generation. There's a Spitfire that decides he wants to feed himself to my AA, and then there's a J2M2 here off in the background. I'm not sure why he doesn't fly more this direction, but we're just going to look at a little bit of an energy fight here. Now, the J2M2, I think it's an M2, anyway. It's not the J2M. It's not a bad plane at all, but even taking off from the runway, I'm basically coming into this fight with an energy advantage. And we're going to merge here, and I'm going to go up, and he's not going to be able to follow it. They're also going to see me bobble the nose around, with the exception, I think, of maybe one or two aircraft. I've been having a heck of a time with head-ons. So call that a plus or a minus of all the guns being in the nose. I might actually take the accuracy mod off the 50s to widen them out a little bit. When you are on, you're on. When you're not, you're not. So the J2 makes a little bit of an effort to reverse me here, or maybe he just figures he wants to go out with a bang. I I am actually able to get some rounds on here. The nose doesn't fight me too much. Need a little bit of a fire, ease low, and I just start to take it back up again. He actually goes to pull into me here, and it's a little bit dangerous. I maybe misjudged how quickly he was going. This is a classic Japanese prop maneuver here. You use your low stall speed and your good low speed control, and you pitch up at people for stall shots. But you can see the P-38K maintains enough control there. Again, despite having a little bit of an energy advantage at the start and being comparable speed there, when I turned off of him, he had no way to follow that. I'll look at another really terrible head-on, and then, again, I'm just going to take it up. We're going to go vertical here. We're going to generate some energy. We're going to let the monstrous engines on this thing do what they do. And the other reason I'm highlighting this is there's actually a couple engagements here that I'm going to highlight because this is me losing a match right now. My inability to get the nose on, fighting the nose a little bit. You can see the flaps are great, right? Like I put the flaps down, I've turned inside him, denied him the ability to come down on top of me, and he should have been dead there, should have been dead here. But if you want to know how you lose a winnable match, this is how you lose a winnable match. So, again, showcasing the good and the bad. The energy generation is fantastic. Flaps are fantastic. The low speed handling is not bad, with the exception of the nose. And that's my inability to finish, right? Just fighting the aircraft. So now we're going to fast forward a little bit. We've got a J7W come in. And it's the same thing, right? I'm going to play to the P-38K strengths. I'm going to generate some energy, and here we are, just not able to get the nose on, all over the place. In these two engagements, I think, in a lot of ways, showcase the greatest strength and maybe the single biggest point of frustration for a new P-38 pilot, regardless of which member of the family you're flying. And we're just going to kind of let this play out for a little bit longer. We're going to burn through towards the end of the match. The other thing that's a little bit challenging about the P-38 you can see here is the compression and really the high-speed control. I know that the P-38L, you get boosted controls, you roll a little bit better, but the reality is all of the P-38s compress really hard in the elevator. And to that extent, they're actually really, really similar to 109s because it is very easy to put the P-38 into a non-recoverable dive if you're not careful. Now, the P-38L, in addition to the boosted controls, does also get an air brake to help pull you out of that dive. Whether it's worth a 0.3 BR bump from the otherwise pretty much identical flight performance of the P-38J is a judgment call on your part. The matchmaker now includes 5.7 and may not be kind. But speaking of the P-38L, I wanted to showcase a fight here with a P-38L. And I'm not on WEP right now. I'm going to chop the throttle a little bit because, again, I don't want to compress too badly. And the P-38L does roll pretty nicely, so there's maybe some risk that he can reverse me. But what the P-38L absolutely can't do is hang with the P-38K in a sustained energy fight. So this is, I got it. I came in with a little bit of an advantage here, but I'm going to get myself slow, and we're going to sort of work from a comparable velocity. And it's a little bit of a demonstration of just how much of a difference these engines make. That P-38L has absolutely no hope of following the K here. Not even for a stall shot. Just absolutely no way to get the nose on. And we're going to sort of blitz through the remainder of this. I have one, actually, I take two sequential head-ons because there's not too many enemies left, and then I completely biff it versus a Yak 3. So it's just, in the interest of completeness, why not? There's a TU2 from earlier that I strafe on the runway just because I'm the one that sent back to the runway. Had I known how this was going to play out, maybe I would have committed harder to the Yak 3 in that head-on. But again, it's just a little bit hard to get the nose on, it's a little bit harder to roll the aircraft around. And I don't know what I was thinking here. I thought clearly I misjudged the relative speeds and energy states. And anyway, that's a Yak 3 blowing me into chunks because low altitude is his house and he turns way better than I do. Anyway, so moving on. This is a BF-109 K4, and he's not really paying attention. He's going after a bomber. But the point here, again, to showcase the strength, is just how far above him I was. So that was an easy roll it over, clean it up. And this is, I cut off the beginning of the energy trap here. I don't feel at all bad about coming in to finish this because I did all the work to actually pull him onto my tail and energy trap him. So I will finish my energy trap. Thank you very much. But this is another one of those matches, right, that had my shooting been a little bit better against targets maneuvering more actively. Or we did this one end of it. I don't know. We'll see. Oh, look at that. This one might actually have been one of the few victories I managed to card. Okay, great. Moving on. And you can kind of tell, the theme at the start of some of these clips is I'm above everyone. Because really within your matchmaking spread, I guess if you get pulled into a 6-3 match, there might be some aircraft that could contest your altitude. But for the most part, you're going to be able to rely on a positional advantage early match and outstanding energy generation to maintain that positional advantage should you choose. This should be a pretty easy shot. And again, with wing-mounted 50 cals and almost any other U.S. prop, that is a pretty easy shot. Unfortunately, I miss it there, right? So this is another one of those matches where it could have been won had I actually made some of the shots that were presented to me, that being one of them. That doesn't necessarily end up being decisive in losing the match. He actually J's out, I guess, out of frustration because he's not enjoying an energy fight that he doesn't feel like he's winning. And now we have a little bit, and again, as a showcase of the P-38K, this is good. We've got a little bit more of a prolonged furball. It's just me and one Yak 3 teammate at this point, and there are a handful of enemies. The Yak 3, of course, is an incredibly dominant aircraft as well, especially down here at low altitude. So the P-38K and the Yak 3 both do sort of a couple of things here very similarly well, which is energy generation. Of course, the Yak 3 turns a lot better, and the P-38K can't necessarily outrun it on the deck, as we saw in the last clip. But if you have a teammate and you can trade targets effectively, you can put yourself in a scenario where even though you're in a fight with multiple opponents, you're really just juggling, because they don't have the ability from an energy production or an energy management standpoint to really hang with you. So at this point, the numbers are kind of, I'm calling out that 190 for my teammate so that he knows 190's coming in. He doesn't get caught by surprise. Sure wish he would have extended me that same courtesy a little later in the match. But anyway, you can see the handling of the P-38 there is a little bit ponderous. He probably should have killed me in that head-on, but unfortunately he didn't. And if you're in a 190 of sort of comparable BR, comparable performance, if you don't kill the P-38K in the merge, you had better run, because there is no hope for you. 190 turns like a brick, so the P-38K can actually turn with it pretty easily, and you can see right here, the energy generation of the 190 is not on par, is not competitive. Again, I do bobble nose around, I miss an opportunity to take him out in the previous loop. Actually, I end up setting him up for my teammate. Gets a couple of shots on him and helps me to get that crit. So the 190 is going to put it into the ground here in a second. And we're just going to jump forward a little bit to the end of the match where you can see me get my comeuppance. But so this is a 0, right? I went back to get fuel. I took off from the runway, and this 0 started with a substantial altitude advantage. And again, this is just energy generation. that Zero started with a huge altitude advantage, and now he's below me and slower. But what he does have is a Key 84 teammate who's actually paying attention. So I figure my Yak-3 has got the Key 84 handle. There's a 190 that's gone back to base. You're going to see here in a minute that my Yak-3 teammate does not have the Key 84 handle. And that's a situational awareness failure on my part. I got it. But had he bothered to type in chat, hey, Key 84 is coming in on you, this match could have ended very differently. Okay, so moving into part 2, new day, new matchmaker. We have one ace match here where we kind of sort of put it all together, suffer minimally with actually aiming the guns, and maybe not a carry, but certainly a clutch here at the end, and a really great showcase for everything we've talked about or I've talked about so far, the awesome engine power and energy generation of this plane. Now, it also highlights that the enemy gets a vote, and being able to capitalize on poor decisions matters, and there are a few of those in this match. I've climbed in, which even the I-225, as good as it is, doesn't have the ability to get up to the P-38's altitude, although it can harass bombers. There's a contrail there in the background. You can see it was briefly spotted as a Spitfire. I do call him out for my team, actually a couple of times, because he's been climbing on the back line. So the match is going hot and heavy at this point. There are people engaged, and he is doing his best to remain unspotted and climb at the back, which tells me he's a particular type of player, or one of a few different types of players. Obviously, somebody that's looking to create an opportunity. There may be a couple of reasons they're choosing to create opportunity in the way that they are. It may be that they're like me and they're just not that good at fighting from a position of advantage, right? Skill issue. Or it may be that they're trying to pad stats. And you can't really assume anything, right? But you do have to recognize that you've got a very capable aircraft climbing on the back line. You can't lose track of that individual. So I moderate my aggression a little bit later in the match for that. Had to fight the nose a little bit there. Not going to follow him down. Not going to throw away all of my position just yet. I do have a P-38 Lima teammate there to help me out. Luckily, that fire sticks, and that 225 goes down. And this is what I meant by moderating my aggressions. This Spitfire is still climbing, and I'm not going to let him climb above me and the rest of my team so that he has got free reign late game. That's my job, right? Free reign late game is my thing. And he's going back to base, or it looks like it. But, the beautiful thing about contrails is I can see that he hooks around. Now, I would like to get down there and help out my 109, but I'm not going to give the Spitfire my 6 o'clock and an altitude advantage on top of it to do so. I do call out the Spitfire, so my 109 knows that he's coming in and he's got problems, but unfortunately, he's got a couple LA-7s down there. The Spitfire joins in. That is really tough to be on the receiving end of if you were the 109. Incidentally, in the background there, we've got that A7M who is happily ground pounding, which we talked about decision making. That A7M, had they chosen to play this a little differently, could very easily have decided this match in his team's favor. But, what are you going to do, right? Anyway, the Spitfire's down there. He's low. He's kind of slow. He's maneuvering, and I've seen him fly a little bit. I hassled him a little bit in chat, so of course I got to finish, right? It would be tremendously embarrassing if I got versed here, but he managed to get really slow. I fight the guns a little bit. I take his wingtip off. I have to get a little bit slow because I compress, and I don't have a hugely, fast dive speed to rely on. So now I've got two LA-7s at relatively close range down on the deck. And man, oh man, just look at the energy production in the P-38K. The LA-7 is an excellent aircraft, really, really good at low altitude. And I produce enough power to stay out of gun range, bring them both up with me, while simultaneously out climbing the A7M that you can see there in the distance. And I'm not really sure. I know I talked about it previously. I know I've talked about it a lot, but I don't know if there's a better demonstration of the awesome energy generation of this aircraft at low speed. And I'm incredibly slow right now because being incredibly slow, a little bit like a 109, is kind of the P-38's happy place. I mean, just really, really tremendous at low speed, at least when it comes to acceleration and power production. And the one LA7 kind of breaks off there, kind of creates a little bit of space. This other LA7 comes all the way up. He wants the stall shot. I'm really terrible at using the rudder for hammerheads, so we're doing it the old-fashioned way, and we're coming back down for LA7 number 1. Um, can't make it work. He dips, but this gentleman who broke off a little bit earlier is now pulling up, and there's just no way. He is really slow at the top of his loop, and I am flying out of the bottom of mine. Just uh, able to energy trap effectively 2 LA7s at the same time from the deck. You gotta love it, right? I mean, or at least if you're me, you gotta love it. But we're gonna jump forward a little bit, and sometimes endurance matters. I actually take 20 minutes of fuel on the P-38K, and that almost exactly matches the amount of WEP you have. So while you may end up having to go back to the airfield, it's a pretty decent middle ground, I think. There's a cautionary tale here, I think, about actually maxing out your crew skills so that you can spot people that are on the forward airfield, because that's where they both are right now. I'm just having a hard time seeing them. I decided to go back and get tickets, if nothing else, but I do spot one of them coming off the airfield. There's probably a plug-in here about crew spotting for him as well, but also for the LA7, do not skimp on putting crew points and repairing your aircraft. That LA7 had to have been right on his forward airfield for forever. It takes me about 15 seconds to repair my plane if I'm not damaged. And he is just going to be parked on the airfield waiting for me to come finish him off because he obviously doesn't have any crew points in repair rank, repair speed. Especially if you're the sort of guy that likes to land at the forward airfield, those points matter. So again, 20 minutes, usually more than enough to outlast people, especially Russian fighters that take min fuel, and pretty easy cleanup here at the end. The power off WEP on the P-38 is not bad, so you could take more fuel if you wanted. But anyway, so there it is, a showcase of the P-38K's strengths and a match where we finally able to put it all together. Happy flying.